All right, the Canes have been on to round two, but now the Flyers are as well. We finally have our opponent. We finally have our game one schedule set. Came out about 1:30 a.m. last night. So, Chris, the big question is, were you awake for this announcement?
I was awake, but somehow or another I wasn't looking at Twitter, so I didn't see the actual announcement. I was more so on Instagram and looking at Netflix. So I missed that, and I woke up to see your text message, and I was like, oh, "Okay, I was actually up at that time, and I completely missed it." But Saturday night, 8 o'clock, Raleighwood, let's do it. I'm with it.
Yeah, I was asleep. A lot of the Canes players talked to today were asleep as well. They went to bed after the first NHL game, the Wild and Stars last night. So we've got a round two here. Canes and Flyers, Chris just mentioned Saturday, 8 o'clock. So we're going to get into it here for the next 15 minutes, break down the matchup, how we feel about how round one went, and the Canes' Stanley Cup playoff chances the rest of the way. And Chris, I mean, I think, kind of the takeaway for me, like going into the playoffs was this looked like it could be the year for Carolina, just based on the team they had and the bracket that laid out in front of them. And it's playing out that way where they sweep Ottawa in the first round, and now they get a Flyers team here that's really young and was a wild card team that had to get pretty hot to even get into the postseason.
Absolutely. And actually, the way they got into the postseason was by beating the Canes back on April 13th, which was very interesting. The Canes beat this team 3 out of the 4 times they face each other in the regular season. However, none of those games were finished in regulation. For our sake, because it is playoff hockey, I would like for there to be some regulation finishes because, man, I would love to get out of Lenovo Center by 12:30 at night and not 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But that is probably the only thing that's really concerning. Even though the Flyers are a young team and the Canes have more experience and technically on paper they are better, the Flyers are scrappy, man. They took them to 3 shootouts out of the 4 regular season matchups. The Canes won just straight up in overtime the first time they went against each other back in October, but nothing finished in regulation. Everything needed more than 60 minutes. And so that will be the only thing that really concerns me with this matchup with the Canes. But, when the playoff hockey comes back around, it's different. Things get tight a little bit more. The young Flyers, will they be able to handle it? And how will the Canes kind of up their game to a different level this time around in the second round of the playoffs?
Yeah, on paper, it's all coming up Canes. And I've got the stats here. I mean, Flyers in the regular season, 21st in goals per game, last in power play percentage. Their penalty kill is 22nd in the league. So really nothing points to them being able to pull the upset on Carolina, but it's hockey and puck bounces in weird ways.
Yes.
And they've got a hot goaltender, and his name is Dan Vladar, and he's currently 5th in the NHL in the postseason right now in goals against average and save percentage. But here's the flip side of that, Chris. Freddie Anderson is first.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Canes have the hot goalie going in, so even that doesn't necessarily scare me.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The Canes just swept the team that had the second hottest goalie
Yeah.
because like Ottawa was looking really good, and honestly, they didn't lose because of their goaltending. The Canes just simply were just better all the way around, and all of those games were very close. You would like to see the Canes in this series, kind of take a little bit more control, more than what we saw in the Ottawa series, more than what we saw versus the Flyers in the regular season, and start working with a couple of goals as a lead. Have a 2 goal lead, have a 3 goal lead, and kind of hold off the Flyers from there. Like, you don't want this to be tight down the stretch. It would be good if the Canes can figure out ways to maybe step on their necks a little bit and try to put these things away. I expect the Flyers to get a game or two, but in the games that the Canes win, I would like to see them, be dominant, be a little bit more decisive, and use their experience to their advantage.
Well, they appeared like they're going to be full strength, to your point there, and that's huge. Like, because I think maybe the kind of tired storyline heading into this round is rest versus rust. We're the media, we got to talk about something, and the
Yeah.
playoffs tend to kind of have these. Pick a sport, a 7-game series. They tend to have these similar storylines. every single series, whether it's basketball or hockey. And in this one, it's well, the Canes haven't played a game since last Saturday, and the Flyers are coming off a hard fought series here with the Pittsburgh Penguins that went 6 games. And I remember last year where I think it was the Panthers that came in off of like
Hmm.
no rest at all into Carolina and they steal game one. And that's the kind of thing you're worried about here, right? Like when you're starting at home, you really can't lose game one because then all of a sudden things get a little more of an even scale. But I think one thing that gives me confidence in Carolina is the fact that they are full strength because at skate today, Alexander Nikishin out there, no non-contact jersey.
Hmm.
Nikolai
Good.
Ehlers out there, full participant. Both seem to be involved in every aspect. Rod Brind'Amour said they're on track to play in game one. And you can't talk. Ehlers kind of went right into the training room, so we didn't get to talk to him. Alexander Nikishin, well, he was around, but he speaks Russian, so I didn't talk to him. But I love this story, Chris, I got from Andrei Svechnikov. I was like, well, Svech, you speak Russian. Have you talked to him? And like, what's going on? How's he doing? And he's like, well, actually, at the end of practice, he asked me to hit him and asked him to hit him high. So I love that. Nikishin wanted to get a little preview, and who hits harder than Svech, right? So if he could take a hit from Svech, I think Nikishin's good to go.
Yeah, we saw that Svech has hands, man. He can try out for the UFC after Nikishin got his hit. And you speak of Ehlers, and I'm very interested in seeing how the success of the Ehlers, Stankoven, and Hall line kind of continues to have their success in this particular series. It felt like the top lines from Ottawa and the Canes kind of X'd each other out. They canceled
Yeah.
each other out. There wasn't a lot of scoring from the top lines there. And we also know that, Matthew Tkachuk had 0 points for Ottawa. He almost, it's like I had the same amount of points as Matthew Tkachuk did in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. But that Stankoven line, led by Stankoven himself, it was the huge difference. And he was on a scoring tear. I want to say 4 goals in that series
Yep.
and had, I think, 5 in all of the Stanley Cup playoffs last year. So, I mean, he's already on a nice little tear. And with Ehlers coming back and, of course, Taylor Hall being very productive as well, you kind of look to that line as the line to continue that momentum that the Canes had to even get him here, to get that sweep, to get to this part of the playoffs. And I would also like to see, how the top line kind of, starts contributing a little bit more. Like, you understand going against, the top line with the Ottawa Senators. I would say that the Flyers aren't as good of a team. So how can your top line also, when going back to my point of dominance, start to assert some dominance as well, getting Aho and Jarvis and Svechnikov a little bit more involved in the scoring aspect of it, and also on the power play. Power play was really good for the Canes towards the end of the regular season. You would love to see them pick up where they left off there as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that's a big storyline going in. Like on the positive side, it's how good Stankoven,
Hmm.
Hall, and Jackson Blake were together, and those guys really complement each other well. When you've got these two young guys that are such great skaters and so good at attacking the net in Blake and Stankoven, and then you've got the veteran Hall that could kind of tee them up and do some of the veteran little things to make those other guys shine. I talked to Jarvis a little bit about it today, and like seeing his body language on the ice, he looked frustrated even at practice. And then in his interview session, you could sense that as well. And he's a guy, I remember watching his like Amazon Prime show, right? And he talked about how he could be like kind of his own worst enemy in his head. Like he
Hmm.
has like negative thoughts and self-deprecating, and he uses that in a positive way, like to motivate himself. Like this is a guy that, like, he's this undersized kid that everybody loves, and he's become one of the best goal scorers in the NHL. So he's got his own kind of way of motivation. So I don't necessarily want to say like the body language and the way he conducted his interviews was a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing. Like he's clearly not happy with his production. I think Svechnikov created a lot of chances in round one, impacts the game in a lot of areas. You hope he stays out of the penalty box a little bit more.
Hmm.
And Aho, at least got to feel good by seeing two empty netters go in. to end that series. So he at least gets on the stat sheet, makes it look a little bit better in hindsight. And I think regardless of who's scoring and when, I think what makes the Canes so dangerous this year, Chris, is just that level of depth. And when you have
Yeah.
Ehlers on the third line, it just makes everything slot into place and look so much different on paper.
Yeah.
Like when you've got the top line, okay, so you're going to throw your best, defensive line against your Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis. Well, then that's when Stankoven, Hall, and Blake shine. And then
Yeah.
when you've got a scorer like Ehlers out there, who was number 2 on the Canes in points in the regular season, that's where, to me, a team like the Flyers just isn't going to be able to keep up. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a team that doesn't even have a 30-goal scorer,
Yeah.
and they don't have a 70-point scorer. So the idea to me that the Flyers are going to be able to beat them, the only way to do it is to really muck it up, which they did versus the Penguins. But the Penguins are really experienced, but they're really experienced because they're really old. You know,
Yes.
like
Yes.
Malkin and Crosby are at the end of the run here, where the Canes are in their prime.
And let me go back. I said Ehlers instead of Blake when I was referring
Oh, okay.
to that second line. But yes, and going to back to your point with Jarvis, Jarvis was the hero in the first game of the regular season versus the Flyers, and he also scored in that second game versus the Flyers. They had two back-to-back games in December where both ended in shootouts and both went the Canes' way. And whenever Seth Jarvis scores in regulation, things go well for the Canes overall. It's I don't know the record off the top of my head, but it's some ridiculous record where like 80% of the time, if Jarvis scores, the Canes are going to win. And I hope that he's not putting too much pressure on himself because of that. But as you're saying, use it for motivation for himself, and I think he will find that. I do think that top line is going to end up figuring out ways to have their way versus the Flyers for sure. But again, you mentioned Vladar and that young scrappy team. They're going to find their ways as well. And so one of the things that Rod Brindamore said earlier this week after one of the practices was that there wasn't a bad period of hockey versus Ottawa at all in that
Mm.
series. And that's maybe why you get a sweep. I think if the Canes can, and it's going to be tough because sometimes you can find yourself, going through the slog of the postseason, all these different games, and hey, I may not have it today, but I know I'm going to get another chance tomorrow. It's not like the NCAA tournament where it's one and done. You can hope that the Canes can replicate that and have a bunch of good periods of hockey together and not have any type of a slippage. So hopefully they're able to bring that, and that what better way to start than tomorrow night at home.
All right, we're going to get into our picks here in a second, but last storyline we had to hit to preview the series is Rod Brindamore. I mean, his history is split basically down the middle as a player between the Philadelphia Flyers and the Carolina Hurricanes. He's a Hall of Famer for both organizations. Like, what a cool kind of storyline
Yeah.
to have. And I was funny to hear him talk about it today, Chris, was he might be the only athlete in Philadelphia history that hasn't been booed by the Flyer fans.
You know what? I've never even thought about that as far as the booing part, but yeah, that's going to be very interesting, for him, and it's really cool to see him. And here's one thing for me: I didn't grow up a huge hockey fan. Grew up in North Carolina. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't here yet, and then I remember
Sure.
the Carolina Hurricanes, moving down here from Hartford. But the very first team that I did actually cheer for before the Carolina Hurricanes came down were the Philadelphia Flyers.
There you go.
It was something about them and that team in the mid '90s that really kind of got to me. What's my guy's name? He wore number 10, and I can't think of his
LeClaire,
name. Leclaire, John Leclaire. He was my guy as a young kid. It was the first hockey player that I remember kind of gravitating myself towards, and so it's interesting to see that, but then also that story with Rod Brindamore. It'll be very cool. However, it would be cool if the Flyers do end up Flyers fans end up booing him because let's get this thing over in four.
Yeah.
and just have them boo them out the building after Game 4 as the Canes are moving on to the Eastern Conference Final.
Yeah, this is their chance to boo them. And is that your pick? Are you going sweep? Let's get into it. What do you think?
I wouldn't say sweep. I think the Flyers are too good for a sweep. But I do think that the Canes can close this out with a gentleman's sweep. So let's say 5 games.
I'm with you. I mean, it'd probably be better TV if I had something opposite of that, or I said they're gonna it's gonna go 7. But I don't see it happening. I don't see 2 sweeps in a row. But maybe that'll be what happens, right? Like they actually are able to pull the sweep, which would be pretty wild. But yeah, I mean, we kind of laid it all out here. The only way I think the Canes lose this series is they beat themselves.
Yeah.
They get some significant injury. But a lot can happen after game 1. The Flyers have a chance to steal game 1. That might actually be their best shot, in my opinion. All other injury considerations aside, just coming in here, with the Canes on a week's rest, just coming here and try to steal one. But other than that, it all comes up the Canes' way here, and we're gonna see if Freddie Anderson can deliver again in round 2, because that could be interesting if they have to do the goalie hand baton. Give Freddie a couple games, give Bussy a couple games, and Kochekov's ready to go as well. So Chris and I will be there on Saturday. We will be there on Monday. We are locked in with your Canes coverage the rest of the way here at WRAL. So stick with us on YouTube, TV, WRAL.com, the new WRAL.com, on our sports page. You're going to want to check that out as well. So for Chris Lee, I'm Pat Welter. We'll see you guys next time.